Hey guys, it's Renee. So as promised from my first photographer freebie, I wanted to go through and hand edit a photo, how I would edit it with my presets, but I want to go through and show you what I would do with each individual slider, and show you some tips and tricks that have really helped me to develop my style and a consistent look throughout all of my images, which is super important when you guys are building a brand. You want a consistent look throughout your website, your Instagram, your Facebook. Basically everything that is going to point back to your brand needs to look consistent. So these are just some tips and tricks that I've come across in Lightroom, and stuff that I've really enjoyed adding to my photos that have kind of given me that light, bright look that I have in all of my images. So let's go ahead and get started. This is my model Jess, and I'll just go over the settings really quickly so that you guys know kind of how I shoot in order to use the sliders that I use so that they'll all make that cohesive, really light, bright look. So this was shot on my Sigma Art 35mm lens. It was at f2.0. The ISO was 160 and the shutter speed was 1/400. It was a kind of cloudy day, but obviously there was some white going on in this photo. This white wall was kind of bouncing light, and so I tend to underexpose my photos a little bit so that I can bring up the shadows and the exposure a little bit. I just find that the way that I like to edit is better if I underexpose a little bit to kind of save the highlights in there. Alright, so let's get started. So the first thing that I would do would be to come down and go to lens correction, profile, and then I just click these. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go in here and find your lens that you use. So I used the Sigma and then it filled in the rest. So the Sigma 35mm art. So basically what it does is it's getting rid of that vignette around the edges. If you guys hear my dog snorting in the background, I'm sorry. But yeah, it just gets rid of that vignetting that the 35mm Sigma art lens puts on like every photo. Around the edges can get kind of dark. And I just think that it brightens up the whole image overall. Then I go back up here and I play around with my exposure. I'm going to bump it up just a little bit. Then I bring my highlights down and my shadows up. So as you can see, the photo starts to look really flat. So then I go back down here and I bring my blacks down just a little bit, but it kind of muddies the skin tones if you bring the blacks down here a super ton. And then I'm going to bring my whites up a little bit. I'm going to bring my vibrance up just a little, and then my saturation down just a little to balance it out. So where I really like to bring up the shadows is down here, just because it doesn't muddy skin tones for some reason when you do it down here. So I'm going to bring up those darks and actually bring down the shadows. And then I tend to, sometimes I'll bring down the highlights a little bit in here, but I generally leave the highlights and the lights alone. A big thing that I do on all of my images and how I get that creamy, pretty skin tone is split toning. This is a really great tool if you want to brighten want to warm parts of the image, but not the whole image overall. Let me show you what it looks like when you go up here and you just mess with the temperature. So see how the whites are starting to look kind of muddied and kind of yellow? You don't want that. So I'm going to set that back down. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to split tone. So I tend to like to put it at 30, saturation 5, and 30, saturation 5 for the shadows as well. So that kind of just warms up the image without muddying everything and all the whites. The whites still stay white when you do it with split toning, as opposed to warming up the entire image, which I think is really pretty. I think her skin looks really nice. So then I'm going to go up here and I think I might want to brighten her skin just a little bit, and so that tends to be the orange slider. You're going to go to luminance and I bring that up just a little bit. That's going to brighten her skin. I like to bring my luminance up for my yellows and my greens. I like to mute my colors a little bit. Not all of them. I leave the skin tones, so the oranges and the reds, I don't touch those. But I do bring down my yellows and my greens. And same thing with the hue. I like to bring it up to right about 40, 43. All right. Let's see. All right. Another really great tool is Tone Curve. If you go down here and click this box that has the line through the middle or diagonally, it's going to bring up your tone curve. How I really like to give that extra light pop to my images is I like to put a point in the center, and then I like to pull that up. And it just brings the image nice and bright and clean looking. Sometimes it washes out the skin and is a little bit too washed out for me. So then I put another point down here and I bring that back down just a little bit. You can play around with it a little bit. But there, that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so then I will just go back and adjust just a little bit because sometimes you just don't, after you've edited everything, after you've worked with all of the sliders, it can look a little bit off. So I'll go back and mess with the sliders and just adjust things to my liking. If I do want the image to be a little bit brighter, one of my other favorite tips to do is to come back down to lens correction, go into manual, go down to vignetting, and this will actually brighten the edges even more, creating a really, really bright, clean look. Don't do it too much because then it looks overdone and it looks like those old like edited photos with the really harsh vignette on them. When you do this vignetting as opposed to the one that's, I believe it's up here somewhere. No, maybe it's actually down here. There's one, oh yeah, okay, so if you go down here, where is it? It's somewhere in here. But when you do it under the lens correction mode, you have a little bit more control over it and it's not as harsh. So I just think that looks super good. And let me just show you the before and after. And I might even, sometimes I do like to look at the before and after because I think I made her skin a little bit too bright. So I might actually come back up and bring the luminance down a little bit and bring, let's see, the shadows back down just a little. Maybe even the highlights. So it definitely helps if you go back and look at your image next to the original image just to make sure it's, you know, still good and pretty and not just overdone. So that's all. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick little basic edit that I've done. I will be putting out some more involved editing in my RJ Education subscription service that's going to be coming out in the next month or two. So be on the lookout for that. I'm super excited to launch that, and I will be going more in depth about my editing process, my workflow, my marketing, my SEO, all of that will be included in that. There will also be a bunch of behind the scenes footage for you guys to kind of follow me along to my shoots and my weddings. So I'm very, very excited to be launching that for you guys. So yeah, just stay in touch. Make sure you're subscribed to my mailing list and also in the RJ Phototribe Education Facebook group. Bye, y'all.